So, Chad, listening to what you're saying and reading your book, Marriage Advance, you are not unfamiliar with some of these things that you're talking about, which has probably helped to give you the insight and helped you to be more effective with them. But can you tell us a little bit about your own experience? Because here you were, you've been deployed, I think it was 8 times to Afghanistan. You said 8 consecutive deployments, and then you got pulled. And how did that affect you internally? And what all happened? I mean, there must have been dynamics when you came back home that were unexplainable and probably caused a lot of tensions. And so, I mean, what is your experience with it? I'll let you speak.
Yeah, well, we talk about, I talk a lot about resiliency and readiness, both on and off the battlefield. I would never, leave for an operation and not be trained in every aspect of the operation, have contingency plans for things that are going to go wrong, and try to just think of anything with an operation that had to be prepared for. I mean, that's in special operations. We do that. We game plan everything. We think everything that we're good at, let's be good at it. Everything we're bad at, let's fix those deficiencies. What's going to go wrong? What could go wrong? Let's have immediate action drills and contingencies for those things. But we don't do that in our personal life very well. And so when I got married, me and Kathy met when we were 17, 18 years old. We got married a year later at 18 and 19 years old. We both came from very broken homes, both from divorced homes, and we never put those strategies in place in our marriage to be prepared for when those hardships would come. We didn't have the immediate action drills. We didn't have the contingencies. In fact, the example for me, where I grew up in Southern Louisiana, very dysfunctional family. My father was a Marine. He was a combat veteran in Vietnam, extreme PTSD, alcoholism, women, and drugs in his life. And so, I seen him get divorced twice. I seen a lot of physical abuse. I was physically abused myself by my father. So I just seen dysfunction the whole time. That was the model for me. And actually going into that marriage, it's kind of sad to say this, but going into marriage, I never looked at a marriage as a permanent thing. It is a permanent thing. It's a lifelong covenant between you and your wife and God. But I never looked at it that way in my younger years. It's just like that's something you do. You like someone, you get married, and then when it gets hard, you move on. That was what I was shown and taught. I mean, that was what my wife was shown and taught, and her mother, who had been divorced several times, and her father as well. So that's what we went into, and everything's obviously great when you're 18 and 19 years old and you're in love or lust with each other, and you have that initial excitement. But we signed up. And I say we signed up. I mean, I was already going through training to become a reconnaissance Marine. That's about the time my wife and I met. But she signed up to be my wife, knowing what it meant to be in special operations, knowing what it meant to be a recon Marine, and knowing that one day I would probably have to do that job. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately for me because I wanted to do that job right away, but I would have to wait 10 years until 9/11 happened to actually get to deploy. And when I did deploy in 8 times, all the things that came with us, finally it really tested our marriage in a way that we never were prepared for. It began with went to Afghanistan and we talk about the pillars of resiliency, like the mind, body, spirit, social. Like I was mentally tough, I was physically tough. I knew my job very well. I was prepared physically to do my job. Like socially, I was part of a JSOC task force, Special Operations Command Task Force, which means I was assigned to one of the top tier 1 special operations units. I worked with the very best special operations people I could work with, at a higher level that I could have worked with. So I was surrounded by the right people. In that spiritual pillar, I would have said it was I had to check in the box too because I had the word Christian stamped on my dog tag. But I really didn't understand what that meant or what being spiritually resilient meant. In fact, at that time I was going to church with my family, but we'd always went to church. But really, I wasn't engaged in church or relationship with God. I checked the box of going to church, and probably I look back now and knowing what I know about my faith now. At that time, I was probably very manipulative and controlling my family. Like my wife's going to go to church and she's going to be like loyal and faithful and all the things I wanted of a Christian woman, and my kids would go to Sunday school and they could get disciplined, and then I might have to beat them so much, like all the things that I wanted out of it, but I wasn't going to take it any further than going to church. And I didn't go into church softball team. Let's just say that. Wasn't who I was. And in fact, I believe that like Christianity and faith was kind of like in men. I've seen it as like a weak thing, and so I just never engaged in that personal relationships. So when I was in Afghanistan, I felt like I had to choose between being a person of faith and being a warrior. And of course, I'm going to choose being a warrior. And the job I did and the things I experienced, it really took a toll on me very quickly. I think that experience of being exposed to the atrocities you see in a place like Afghanistan, the things that happen, the oppression of the people, the sexual molestation of children, the killing of innocent civilians there, those kind of things. Without God in my heart, it left a giant hole inside of me that I fill with, hate and rage and anger and bitterness. All those things just kind of overtook me and brought a darkness over me. And I didn't handle it the right way. The way I handled it was just being a very intense, very frustrated individual. And that kind of works well in combat, to be honest with you, like being intense and being frustrated and just being real focused. But it doesn't work so well when you come home and you have to be a husband and father. And so I came home as being a husband and being a father, and tried to flip that switch and turn that intensity and frustration and anger off. And it just wasn't something I could do. And my home was not a happy and safe place for my wife and children. I went through temper tantrums. I punched things and break things and slam doors and yell at my wife and children like I was a Marine Corps drill instructor. And it just wasn't a good environment. And over time, that anger and frustration started to manifest in these physiological symptoms. And it started to get much worse. I can tell you one time, like, I remember coming home from Afghanistan, and my daughter was so excited you probably read this in the book. I think I wrote this in that book. My daughter was like having her birthday party, and she was so excited that I was going to be there for her birthday party. And she's very opinionated. She still is, especially now she's 21. So at this time, she was like so opinionated, and she had to express that she didn't like her icing on her cake. And something so simple, and I like flipped out and grabbed a handful of my little girl's birthday cake and threw her cake against the wall and destroyed my little girl's birthday. I remember like when I did that, like, you're in the middle of you do like something wrong and you're out of control, but once that momentum starts going, if you stop, then you're kind of like admitting you're wrong, so you kind of just justify your behavior. But that was like that, and many incidents like that just let me know like I was out of control, and my reaction was, instead of to fix the behavior, my reaction was to isolate and distance myself from my family and just deploy as much as I could, stay as busy as I could. When I was home, I was going to schools and training. And like I said, that anger started to manifest these physiological symptoms. My arms would start to go numb. My face would go numb. I feel like my throat was swelling shut. I couldn't breathe. Like if I had like a 1,000-pound weight on my chest, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I know now these are early signs of panic attacks, and eventually these panic attacks started to manifest. It got to the point to where I knew I needed to speak out and say something, but I also knew if I said something, the guys on my team, the guys I worked with, would think I was weak. And I'd be isolated from my group. I'd be read out of my program and not be able to do my job anymore. So I tried to push it down and keep it to myself as long as I could. But the symptoms only got worse. In fact, I had what's called, I know now because I've studied a lot about this now, what's called disassociation, to where I would almost live like this in this bird's eye view of myself. Like I would almost see myself like a third person, especially during real stressful times of operations. And then I would have like these moments where I wake up out of a fog, and like I was waking up out of a dream and I couldn't remember certain things. So I was definitely in a pretty intense state of a heightened sense of panic and in high levels of stress. And we had a moment to where in my deployment, we had a bunch of team members killed. There were 10 team members that were killed, and there were a group of 12 Afghans who worked for me, and 10 of them were killed. And you may, that Afghans, you may think that's not a big a deal as U.S. service members, but these are guys that I worked with for 3 years. I lived in their homes. I played soccer with their kids. I ate dinner with their families. Like these were my brothers. I would have died for them, and they would have died for me. In fact, they put their lives on the line for me many, many times. And they were so that if I was hanging on by a thread, that thread broke when that happened. But yet I kept operating anyway. And there was my last operation. I remember I was like 2 weeks out. I was with the local nationals only. I wasn't with any of the U.S. service members. And at the end of that 2 weeks, I kind of woke up pretty much like out of a fog and realized that I wasn't only making decisions that were putting myself in danger, but I was putting other people in danger as well. And that was what I needed. That realization is what I needed to actually speak up and say I'm having problems. I was brought home, and I was put before a clinical psychologist and diagnosed for the first time with severe chronic PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was in bad shape. Like the level of stress that I was under, it's very hard to describe because I hear people like misuse panic attacks all the time. They're like, "Oh, I had a panic attack in traffic the other day," and maybe they had a bad time in traffic, but it's not the same. Like when I explain the level of panic attacks like I would have, and it's like if you were handcuffed to the bottom of a pool and you could see the air, like how desperate you're drowning, like how desperate would you be to get one breath of air? Like you would just be in complete panic to get one breath of air, but you never die. You're constantly drowning like 24/7. And so it becomes so desperate that you actually want to die to make that overwhelming fear of dying go away. Like the overwhelming, because you feel like your body's just shutting down and your body's not working anymore. And I've heard other veterans describe like if they're like you look at the Twin Towers and people jumping out of the window. Those people didn't want to die when they jumped out those windows, but the heat was so hot, the flames were so hot, they had to get away. Like you feel that way when you're in those moments of panic attack. Like you're on the roof of a building and the building's burning, and the only way to escape is to jump. That's kind of how you feel like in these moments of panic. And that's where I was like 24/7. And the medicine they tried to give me actually made me feel worse. They made me feel like I wanted to die. Like I wasn't suicidal at that moment, but I get these like suicide thoughts. And so I'm like, I was scared of myself. And I actually desired to die. And on top of all that, I was completely ashamed. I felt like I totally failed. I worked my whole life to get to that job. I came from like the worst childhood. Like I was zero chance of me ever making special operations. I didn't even have a high school diploma when I went in the Marine Corps. Marine Corps let me in because I was living on my own, and the recruiter felt sorry for me and wanted to help me out. Marine Corps gave me this brand new platform in life. I made it in special operations. I got an MBA. I can barely spell MBA, but I got one. The Marine Corps really gave me, and I made it all the way up to the, recon and then force recon and then JSOC. Like I made it all the way that pinnacle point of getting to operate in that way. And then in one moment it was all gone. Like, and I felt totally like I failed. I failed my teammates. I failed our country. I failed the mission that I was given, and I was completely ashamed. So I'm dealing with panic, shame, guilt, and I feel like I have no purpose at all anymore. And I was really lost in a really dark place. And that's when my wife and my counselor talked me back at Eric into getting on his mats and doing jiu-jitsu, because it was something I did my whole life, and they thought it would be healthy for me, and I did. And I honestly, I felt like I found a cure. But say something.
Yeah, man, I was just curious. You said you got married at a very early age from what I was hearing. I was 18. I just turned 18 when I very first got married. If you had it to do over again, I know, you smooth things out later on, but do you think you was ready to get married at that age?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I don't regret it because,
right.
We've been 25 years, celebrating 25 years next week. And,
right.
And then
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Yes.
We have 3 amazing kids. And so I don't say that I wasn't ready out of regret, because I don't regret it, but no way we're ready. We're equipped to be successful in marriage. And because of that, both my wife and I, there's been some very painful years because of that.
Yeah. Chad, I want to go back to the PTSD. I know I've spoken with numerous men who were deployed in a war zone, got PTSD, came home to a very unsupportive environment. In fact, in litigation, we've had recordings of men who have PTSD, and the women are just screaming at them, yelling at them in their face, baiting them, pushing them. And the amount of self-restraint that they showed, even suffering with the PTSD was amazing. So in the men that you work with through the Mighty Oaks Foundation, how supportive is or how, I guess the question is, how important is family support? When these guys are coming back with PTSD, they come home to an unsupportive environment. What are their odds of success or odds of getting through it and getting healed, versus coming home to a complete disaster? Sometimes they come home to an empty house or a cheating spouse or whatever the case is. So, based upon your experience and your interactions with these guys, what's the difference in healing, and as far as how fast they can heal, depending on family support?
I don't know that you can't. I think it's very difficult to heal from something as at least I can speak to my experience with PTSD, the depth of PTSD that I had. it's very difficult to heal when you're in a dysfunctional relationship, particularly with your spouse. Kathy, I mean, she's okay with me speaking about this, but she was not very supportive. And it wasn't that I think she was malicious or didn't want to be. I think she didn't understand. There was no training, no education. We didn't know what the words PTSD meant. Mm-hmm. She just was like, "You're being a jerk, and you're not being the husband who I desire. So I'm gonna." And she could be like anybody else. I talk about all the things that I did, but she could be, a tyrant too. And so there was a lot of times she was screaming at me and provoking me and pushing me, and I'm trying to hold it together. And there was some very ugly fights, and I'm surprised, it never got violent with the state I was in and the way she would push me. And I resented her for it. I resented her for it for a very long time. I felt like I was struggling. The one person that should be able to be there to have empathy for me and compassion for me, to be able to have patience for my frustration, the anger, the anxiety that I'm under. The one person that should be able to do that should be my spouse, and she wasn't doing that for me. And I resented her for it. And there was times I would say I had a hatred towards my own wife over it. I look back now and I actually don't resent it anymore, because I know she just, at that time, she just had no idea. And she just, it was just, she was frustrated too. And so who I really blame it on, because anytime you're frustrated about something or you're mad about something, like we see in the world right now, there's some just anger right now. It's just being directed at the wrong people. And that was in our relationship. There was just anger in both of us, but we were just directed at the wrong places. I mean, we should have went out and got educated ourselves. We should have, but I look at the military, and back then the military did not do a good job of talking about PTSD, of briefing the individuals. Hey, some of you may struggle with this, and when you do, here's what you need to do. Here's how you need to talk about it. You shouldn't be scared of getting help. Like, you're not going to lose your job if you're not going to get help. In fact, actually, people were losing their jobs when they asked for help, and still some of that right now. But even take it further and sit down with spouses, the FROs, the family readiness officers of those units, they'll sit down with spouses and saying, hey, your husband's deploying. He's going to go to combat. He's going to do hard things. And sometimes he's going to act like a jerk. And you maybe have to show him a little more compassion, a little bit more empathy and understanding. Or, I said to your husband, we have a lot of male spouses too. But, I think spouses just need to be trained, equipped, and understand what someone's going to face when they go to combat and how they're going to react, and understand it's okay. And this is how you need to behave in response.
Yeah. In my experience with family court, if there's PTSD involved, first of all, it's usually always used against that service member, regardless if the PTSD interferes with their functioning or their ability to be a parent. Not everybody who deploys has PTSD, and that's one argument I make to the court is the spouse will say, well, they have PTSD, so therefore they need supervised visitation. So talk about that from your perspective, because you've worked with several service members and veterans with PTSD. Are they automatically in danger to be around their children?
No. Just because someone's diagnosed with PTSD does not mean they're dangerous about it. In fact, I would say oftentimes it's the opposite. I behaved, and I can say a lot of other veterans that have had extreme combat experience can can have erratic behavior. They can be angry. They can be, but usually they do those things once they're pushed. What the normal behavior is isolation, being recluse, being really quiet, keeping yourself, wanting to be left alone. And so, kind of like a sleeping bear that you go poke it, then you're going to hear from it. But for the most part, veterans who are struggling with like severe PTSD are really kind of keeping themselves, and they really need that family support. There's nothing I love more than when I'm struggling that way than, I remember just my kids to come over and put their arms around me and lay on dad's lap and hug me and love me. Like, I wanted that emotional support. Mm-hmm. Now my kids are older, so now it's my puppies. But so I think it's the opposite of.
I agree. And we know that about 22 veterans a day are committing suicide. Based upon your experience with the veterans, how many do you think are having issues in family court or issues with having access to their children?
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers on that, but I could say just from my experience after doing Mighty Oaks and seeing the personal, like we get contacted a lot when there's a veteran suicide or active youth suicide, and one of the first things you hear is, "Oh my gosh, like no one saw it coming." That's the first thing they always say is, "No one saw it coming." And then after like 2 or 3 days of talking to people, it's like the signs were everywhere. And oftentimes, I mean, I can tell you like 4 people that I've dealt with in the last 2 weeks that are going through divorces and they're having suicide ideations, contemplating suicide. They're looking at losing everything through, their careers, being financially ruined by their spouses through divorce, being right or wrong. It doesn't matter when you're talking about this topic of suicide, and having their kids taken away. And so yeah, I could 3, maybe 4 this week, and I'm not in the programs office. Our organization is pretty big, so I don't deal with applications and programs. So a lot of times people reach out to me and ask, "Hey, can you get me in touch with the programs people?" So I'm just like handing it off. So I don't know how many we're dealing with as an organization, but like I said, I think 3, maybe 4 this week and all of them were related to that. I mean, obviously they're dealing with combat issues and PTSD, but the tipping point that seems to push it over is family. I mean, that was my story, right? I came home and dealing with this, and I jumped into martial arts, but things kept spiraling out of control. Despite the success in martial arts, I never got better, and I found myself divorcing my family, separated from my wife and kids, and in a closet with a pistol in my hand. And what led me to being in a closet with a pistol in my hand and wanting to take my life was not because I wanted to end my pain. It was because I realized that I'm okay now. I did so much damage that my wife doesn't want to be with me anymore. She filed for divorce. We sold our home. We're in 2 separate apartments. We just signed 12-month leases. Like, my marriage is over. My family's over. Somebody else is going to be a stepdad to my kids. It's just ugly, and I'm responsible. I came to this conclusion. I was responsible. I was the problem. And the only way to solve that problem and eliminate their pain, not mine, their pain, was to take my life. I had this thought that they're going to be sad without me, but they're going to be better off. And that same hopeless thought finds a home in the hearts of 20-plus veterans every single day, that somehow my family, my kids, my wife, my friends are going to be sad without me, but they're going to be better off. And it's a lie that we believe, and we make this very permanent decision to this temporary problem to try to solve it. And it's a complete tragedy that we believe that, but that was the lie I believed. And I would sit in my closet, I had my pistol, and put my family pictures out, and I try to build up the courage to pull that trigger. And but the one thing that would stop me is every time I put that gun to my head, I would think about who would find me. Somebody's always going to find you, especially after a few days, just to start smelling, right? And somebody's going to find you. And the only other person that had a key to my apartment was my son, Hunter. He's a Marine now. And I thought, man, I don't want my kid to either let someone in and find me or find me himself. And so that would give me enough to like pump the brakes. But the next day I was back at it, trying to build myself up to do it again. Yeah. And,
Chad, do you still deal with the panic attacks?
I spent, so this was about 11 years ago that I actually had finally got past this. And there's still times, despite the fact that I run this foundation, that I've been able to serve over 100,000 people, that I've been through all my own things, that there are times that I still struggle with anxiety, my own depression. And last year I actually had panic attacks again for the first time in about it had been about 5 or 6 years that I hadn't had any panic attacks. But my son was in Afghanistan. He was involved in combat. People were telling me, because they're proud of him, the 3rd generation Marine. I know a lot of people know me in the Marine Corps. So they were like bragging to me about some of the stuff he was doing. And he's like engaged in combat. There was a week that he was involved in several incidents. And, I was proud of him and happy he was there and happy he was getting that experience. He wanted to go serve his country. But the dad in me was like, my son's in Afghanistan. I've been there 8 times. There's no reason he should be there. And this is going on too long. And it was very, very difficult for me. And I'm just thankful that all the things that I teach at Mighty Oaks for people to deal with panic, stress, anxiety, all these things that we teach, I was able to have the right people around me to do what I teach other people to do. And I did exactly what we teach people to do every day to pull me through that and keep me on track. And so I thought, it's not something at first, like leading an organization like this, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm ashamed. Like, I'm not qualified to do it anymore. And then I realized, this is things that I experienced and I'm going to deal with the rest of my life, but this is the way we handle them moving forward that is a difference. And the way I handle it was a lot different than I handled it before in the past.
Right.
Because that it quickly got me through what I need to get through.
And you recognize what's happening now versus back in the day. I haven't had them in a while, just like you. I had extreme panic attacks. That is probably one of the worst feelings on the face of this earth. I mean, I used to go lock myself in a room. I didn't want to be around nobody. I didn't want them looking at me. It really is bad. And I was curious if you still have those, because once I got my life together, I started kind of separating myself. I'll have them every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can kind of tell when they're coming and know how to work myself through them now. And so, yeah, and I know the things that I should and shouldn't do in my life that could bring anxiety in my life and lead to that.
I'm sure that the MMA had a lot to do with calming that down too, as well, right?
It does, but I mean, when I have the panic attacks, I feel like I'm gonna have a heart attack. My blood pressure actually shoots up to. The last time I went to the emergency room over it, my blood pressure shot up to 200 over 130, which is not safe. So, so I'm terrified to get. I mean, that's stroke level. So I'm terrified, and I have I'm very athletic. I work out very hard, so I have a very healthy heart. I've had it checked out, and I have a very healthy heart and cardiovascular system. So my blood pressure gets that high means my body's under extreme stress, and I probably shouldn't be out doing anything physical to calm it down. The panic attacks, no, but anxiety and depression, absolutely. Training. I mean, like I said, I think jiu-jitsu is great. I love doing jiu-jitsu. I still do it all the time. And when I get stressed out, like I go to the gym and I find like some 20-year-old stud and I choke him out. Like it makes me feel better. So I love jiu-jitsu. But as much as I do, it's not the solution to my life's problems.